Hello and welcome to the City of Reading Mental Health Series. Today we are on our third session uh, talking about grief and how to handle grief during the holidays and beyond. This is the third of our four sessions. The first was on Mental Health 101. The second was on youth and going from isolation to socialization and grief. And then we'll have a fourth one next Tuesday. And I just want to welcome all our viewers and if there are participants in. And what we have done for the last two series, because he's a huge part of doing this, and this is part of his brainchild, we allow our mayor to give us words of welcome. So, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone, both that are participating as panelists, as well as the audience. Tonight's topic, as you stated, is grief and getting through the holidays and beyond, which is so much needed, obviously. But before I share a few words, I want to give a special thanks to, obviously, the individuals that are part and sponsoring this event, which is the African American Community Connection, the Lonnie Walker Foundation, and of course, the City of Reading, myself, Mayor of the City of Reading. Also, I'd like to acknowledge once again a special thanks to Ms. Wayton Butler for hosting it, moderating it. And of course, I am so excited with the panelists, as I have been throughout the rest. But today it's a very special because they are each have a special place in my heart. They are personal friends of mine that I hold in very high standard. That being said, Ms. Crystal Gilmore Harris, who's going to be having a very impactful testimony. Professionally, we have Ms. Tamara Allen, again, somebody who I look forward for the holidays because at times we have been able to do some collaboration in serving the needy, who is a school-based psychotherapist, and of course, our very own Pastor Nick Camacho from the Reading Police Department. So to those that are watching from anywhere in the world, I hope that tonight's conversation provides you with hopeful tools to manage and understanding and overcoming grief. Unfortunately, recently there's been more people than ever experiencing the loss of loved ones, unexpectedly, tragically, or suddenly, especially during this thing called coronavirus. So to you, I say, you don't have to do it alone. You may not have the resources, but you definitely have some resources here today. So, and you do have a community that is behind you and needs you. Um, this type of setting provides an ideal setting to initiate a healing journey because you will recover, you will heal, and you will overcome any pain, suffering, or hurt that you may be holding on. But again, just seek the help that you need. And hopefully tonight, discussion will be the first step towards living your best chapter yet. So to all the participants, thank you. To all those watching, my prayers always are with you. And please share this so that we cannot hold this by ourselves. Let's share it so others will benefit from it. Thank you once again.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. And as usual, you have all the right words. The thing that I love about our mayor is not only is he sensitive and compassionate, but having the right words is half the battle. And I won't forget already that you're not alone. And I think that is key. And we're hope that you take that message from this session. But with that, I would want to get to our first guest, Crystal Gilmore Harris. And this is going to be maybe a little awkward for me and for her because we work together every day and have conversations. But this is something that she can talk about in terms of her significant other that passed away and a father that passed away, and in the midst of a pandemic, but we've had to deal with it sort of together. And I've learned so much from her, but it's best if she tells her story and then we go from there. So Crystal, If you want, I don't know if you want to start with Zane.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. First, thank you for having me on as a panelist. I hope that something that I say tonight will help someone else who is going through the stages of grief. I was sharing with Mr. Butler today that it's kind of weird how you think when people pass away, you grieve people and you grieve them all the same. But I was explaining to him that there's a difference in the way I grieve. I am grieving the loss of Zane versus the way I'm grieving the loss of my father. When I lost Zane, it was a surprise. I wasn't expecting it. He left the house that day for work. He went out he was an Uber driver at night. He went out to do that. And I fell asleep thinking he was going to come home. And I woke up at like midnight and he wasn't there. And I started to panic. And in the midst of my panicking, I was sharing with Mr. Butler today that I kind of went into female mode, so to speak. And I shared with him that I actually was sending him messages like, where are you? I don't understand what's going on. If there's something else or somebody else, you need to just tell me, like right away, instead of thinking that something could have happened to him. My first thought was that he was doing something wrong. And as the night went on, then I started to realize that there had to be more to it than what I was thinking, because he never did anything like that. Even if he was going to be late, he called like 100 times to tell me he was going to be late, when he was going to be late. And it just kept getting worse. I share with Mr. Butler that the way I found out that Zane passed away is I got a call from a police officer who called back the number because I had called so many times. And when I answered the phone, I was like, where are you? And he was like, this is Sergeant so-and-so. And I was like, what? And he said to me, how are you related to Zane Major? And I was like, what happened? What did he do? And he was like, I need you to answer how you're related. And I said, I am his girlfriend. What is wrong? And all he said to me was, he passed on. And I shared with Mr. Butler, when he said he passed on, at first I didn't fully understand what he was saying to me. I was like, he passed on what? He passed on through a red light. He passed on, you put him in jail. What are you saying to me? And then he said, I'm sorry to tell you, he has passed away. And that was like the last thing I remembered. And I kind of remember screaming, and my daughter took the phone. And for the next couple of days, I was numb. And for me, that was scary because I am so used to being in charge of my life and being in charge of what's going on and being able to take care of everyone around me. And for the first time in my life, I was completely numb. I felt like I was in a time zone of my own, and I could hear everyone around me talking. I used to refer to it as, I feel like I'm in a swimming pool drowning and I'm putting my hand up for people to pull me out of the water, but nobody's grabbing my hand, and I just keep sinking to the bottom of the pool. And I think it was because it was unexpected. Like, we had plans, and to get a phone call to tell you that someone that you love is gone is very harsh. So for my grief for Zane, it's missing. I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. I didn't have a chance to tell him I loved him. And I keep going over and over in my head. Did I tell him I loved him that day? Was I being mean? Like, all those things were sticking in my head. And everyone around me, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people around me, they were so used to Crystal can take care of everything that they were still functioning that way. And they weren't realizing that I wasn't functioning that way. And for the first time, I realized that when you are known as a strong person, people automatically think you can get through anything. And they were saying, oh, you'll get over this, you'll be strong. And they were the worst words I could possibly hear, because I couldn't figure out what happened. So it was so hard to figure out how to get over it. I fast forward 2 years and I lost my dad. We had a funeral for Zane on January the 19th. I lost my father a year later on January the 18th. So the day before the day that I buried Zane, the same day that I buried Zane, I was sitting in a funeral home planning a funeral for my father. And for those of you who know me, I'm a daddy's girl. So now I've lost the second man in my life. But the loss of my dad was different than the loss of Zane. My dad had a brain bleed, and we were able to spend time in the hospital with him. We were able to hold his hand. We were able to tell him we love him. He would squeeze our hand. We were able to let our family members call and say goodbye. So I felt like I was able to have my last words with my dad, where I didn't get that choice or option with Zane. I also feel like the loss of Zane was preparing me for the loss of my father, because I realized the difference in grief. And that was the first time I realized the difference in grief. And I had lost a lot of people in my life, but once I lost my father and after losing Zane, I realized the difference in the way you grieve for certain people. The way I'm grieving for my father is not the way I'm grieving for Zane. My father was sick, so I felt like losing him was painful, but it was selfish to keep him here because he was sick and he was fighting on our behalf. So I felt it was selfish. Where losing Zane, he was healthy. I mean, one of his favorite sayings was, "Your health was your wealth." So it was two different types of grief. When I lost Zane, I didn't celebrate the first Thanksgiving. I stayed home by myself, and everybody kept saying, "You need to come out, you need to come out." And I said, no. I didn't celebrate Christmas the way I wanted to. I remember forcing myself to put up decorations because of my granddaughter. But then through COVID last year, I realized I had to grieve because I hadn't grieved at all, because I went right back to work, to coaching, to doing everything for everybody else. And I was trying to put my feelings to the side. So I had to slow down and I had to think about it. And then COVID hit and Christmas was taken away. And Thanksgiving was taken away from me. So because they were taken away from me, I now understood that the year before I didn't celebrate it. Now last year during COVID, it was taken away. So this year I'm making up for it. I decided that instead of not celebrating those holidays, I need to celebrate those holidays in memory of Zane, in memory of my dad, because they loved the holidays and they loved family. And I had to figure out how to do that. I think Mr. Butler probably thinks our office, I threw up Christmas in our office, I keep saying, because I have decorated every nook and cranny of our office. At home, I've decorated every nook and cranny of our office. And I realized it's a coping mechanism for me now to go into the holiday and go into the holiday celebrating it the way I would have celebrated it if they were here. I never thought it would, but it's actually making me happy. When before I was miserable because I was sitting at home and I was feeling sorry for myself. And I was thinking that it wasn't fair that I was here and I was celebrating what they loved. But this year I've learned that it's okay. It's okay for me to move forward while moving forward with them in my heart. And moving forward doesn't mean moving on, because
well, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to make sure that you definitely give a few of these things. You were saying, the decorating, everything was part of the coping, but you also did some other things that were really important. And could you talk about Kindred Spirits?
Yes. I started my own support group because when I went to the first support group meeting, I walked in and they said, "Hello, welcome to the anger stage of grief." And I'm looking around like, wait, the anger stage of grief? You people are on the anger stage of grief, and I'm on the stage of, I don't know what happened, and I don't know how I got here. So this is not helping me, because at this point, I wasn't angry. I was still a little confused. Well, then I waited a few weeks, and someone said, well, you should go to a church-based grief support group. And I was like, okay, you know what? I will try that. Well, by the time I went to the grief support group that was church-based, I have to admit, I was now angry with God. I couldn't understand how God gave me something that was so special for me, and it was exactly what I was looking for, and then he took it away. So I decided, in Crystal fashion, to start my own support group, and I connected with three other women, And I said to them, I don't want a support group where there is rules and it's set up and this day we're going to talk about this and this day we're going to talk about that. I want a group of women that are going through the same thing I'm going through, that are grieving the loss of their soulmates. And we just have an open session that's non-judgmental. If you want to show up and you want to laugh and talk about all the fond memories you have of that person, let's do it. If you want to show up and you want to cry that day, we're going to cry with you. But there's no judgment zone here. And you can feel free to be whatever stage of grief you're in, because I realize no one grieves the same stages at the same time. So how can I go to a support group that's set up by grief, by stages, if I'm not in that stage of grief? It wasn't helping me. It was actually putting me in a weirder space, because I was already trying to comprehend what I was going through. And now I have some amazing friends. And we're all grieving different levels. One had 11 years lost, one had 5 years lost, and one of us, we had 3 weeks in between the time that we lost our soulmates. And it's amazing, because now what happens is when I'm having a bad day, I can send a text message to our little group, and instantly they will say or do something that will make me feel better. Or we'll say, hey, everybody, let's go meet for dinner. And we go meet for dinner. And I'm able to feel comfortable, and I don't feel like I'm putting a burden on anyone, because they understand me. And I think when you join a support group, it has to be a group of people who fully understand you in order for you to get any benefit out of it. And creating my own support group actually has helped me get through a lot of days. I don't know what I would not do without the women in my support group. And recently we brought another woman into our support group, and it's helping her. So we know that the way we're handling it is beneficial versus causing you to stay in a stage that you're not even in, or in a stage that you want to get out of.
And can you talk to counseling? Because I know you also went through counseling.
I did, and I owe you that. I was coming to work, and obviously I was not coming to work in crystal fashion. And one day, Mr. Butler walked to my desk, and he just slid a card across my desk, and he said, you do know that, through the Reading School District, we do get free counseling. Here's the number. Maybe you should just call them. I'm not really saying that you need it, but you might want to give it a try. I had been in counseling before. I had a stroke a few years ago, and I had to go to counseling because I lost some functions of my arm and my leg, and it put me into a depression. So I was familiar with counseling, but it was like the last thing on my mind was to go and sit and talk to somebody about death for counseling. Because, you've been through so many deaths, you wouldn't think of it. But going there, it was great because I was able to talk about how I felt. And the gentleman that was my counselor, he was not judgmental. He actually would laugh and say, so now that you've paid me for this session, you've done all the talking, so you know all the answers. You just have to put them in place. And that was heartwarming for me, because then I realized the stages that I was going through wasn't any different than anybody else. And the stages that I was going through, I wasn't crazy. I was starting to think that, how could I not get control of my life? I have control of everything. How could I not gain control of my life? And he shared with me that that was part of grieving. That was part of the stages. That was part of getting through understanding what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and where you go from here. Because your life changes drastically. Zane and I were like two peas in the pod. I mean, people would laugh. We'd be in Reading doing something, and we'd be in Philly doing something, and we'd end up somehow back in Reading doing something too, because we were a team. So he truly was my soulmate. So I was trying to figure out how to live. But when trying to figure out how to live, everything I was doing was reminding me of him, because we did everything together. So it was a struggle. And I was doing it while keeping a smile on my face. So everyone around me thought I was okay, but I was dying inside, because I would go home and then have to be alone and think about what it is that I was really going through.
Wow. And I'll tell you for myself, it was a little interesting too, because I believe I was grieving, although my thing was Zane was so involved with the community, and we all were in sports and stuff, and I saw the impact he had on children. I told you today, we did a memorial service for him, and I said to her, I felt as adults we were in the way. The kids could have ran the whole thing. They really stepped up and showed me that we maybe don't give our kids enough credit. That they understand what's going on. But I also know that getting professional help is important because like you said, even though we can appear strong and we can think everything's okay, but sometimes you need the confirmation. Sometimes you just need to be heard. So saying that would be a perfect transition to Tamara to talk about the professional aspect or the stages of grief and how people may experience it, or maybe even what from the example Crystal gave us. Tamara.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. So yeah, and thank you for sharing your story, Crystal. It's definitely, tragic. So I'm sorry for your losses. But I guess grief in general, just to give like just a general definition, it's basically a normal response to loss after a disaster or a traumatic event. With that being said, everyone experiences grief differently. There's differences and similarities between the way that adults and youth experience grief. Some of the similarities are that, both parties need to express grief openly. They need to have their grief acknowledged by others, needing that extra support through that grief process, needing assurance that it's not their fault, or what we can call magical thinking in the therapeutic world, and needing assurance that they're not going crazy. And I think that's kind of what Crystal touched on in the beginning, when she said that, she kind of like didn't know what to do, that initial, that shock, that denial, kind of, feeling like you're drowning. And some of the differences are when it comes to children's grief, it can be intermittent, sometimes seemingly absent, where they're kind of like just ignoring the whole situation that happened. Whereas with adults, it's more of like a continual awareness and experience of loss. Children's understanding of death can be limited to their age and their cognitive development, whereas adults, they're more mature. They've probably experienced loss already several times throughout their life. The children's ability to remember the deceased, which would be limited before puberty, and they may need help, remembering from adults or through talking through it through therapy. And then the adults, we have fully developed memories. So it's more present in our minds.
Can I do something real quick before I get in trouble? Number one, I want to mention our sponsors again, the Lonnie Walker Foundation, the African American Connections, the City of Reading, and the Mayor's Office. But one of the things that I also want to make sure that we, I guess, make clear, whatever, or talk about youth. One thing I said to Crystal today, or she said to me actually, and pointed out, I was talking about the memorial service. One of the things that counselors at the high school had the kids do was write letters. And all those letters were delivered to Crystal. And they were basically saying what Zane had meant to them. And she was saying how powerful it was for her, but I know it also was powerful for the children. So Tamara, can you speak to that a little bit? Some of the activities or whatever that you do with kids in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's the writing the letters. We use that like for a lot of like pretty much any traumatic experience, grievance and loss being one of them. But that is a good way to get the kids and get the adults, get us talking about the situation. If we can't talk face to face with someone, sometimes they're not comfortable with expressing their feelings and emotions, which is very common for youth that are struggling with grief and loss. But yeah, it's more of a coping skill for them. And I know when I've worked with youth in the past, and actually currently I have some now on my caseload, but writing the letters, reading them and sharing their feelings with another family member, in the end is kind of like the goal, getting them to talk about it and feel more comfortable talking about it and getting to the point where they're able to be accepting of it. Another popular one is kind of like writing their story about what happened, kind of going step by step, kind of how they remember things, what the person meant to them, and getting that out and getting that down on paper. And then at the end, as an end result, at the end of therapy, having them tell their story to a loved one, sharing it with a loved one, maybe in a group setting, and things like that. But yeah, there's different types of coping skills. There's, keeping busy, finding things to do, getting involved in the community, doing charity work, kind of planning ahead maybe for family events that may have been pre-planned, as a means to prepare, to be proactive for those moments that are going to come up. The funerals, family gatherings, things of that sort. But yeah.
Okay, and I know in school we have, forgive me, I'm thinking of progressions. What's the new name of the company?
It's Malvern.
Malvern, yeah. We have
Service.
Malvern in all our buildings, and we also have communities in school. We also have Pennsylvania Counseling. I'm not sure if they're still in a couple of the buildings, but saying that we do have school-based counseling for kids. And I know you were sort of saying the coping mechanisms or activities, but the resources themselves, do you want to mention a few more resources maybe for parents or for adults looking for help?
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's a couple local groups that they have for grief and loss. There's at Reformation Evangelical Lutheran Church. They're located at 3670 Perkiomen Avenue. Currently, I know they have groups running up until December 23rd on Thursdays at 1:30 and 6:30. Also at St. Catherine of Siena, which is located at 2427 Perkiomen Avenue. They're available Mondays at 7. And that started October 11th, but it runs through April 11th. There's a hotline. It's called Pennsylvania Support and Referral Hotline for grief and loss, or other resources that you might need therapeutically. And that's a number that you dial, which is 1-855-284-2494. There's one that's specifically dedicated to the LGBTQ community. And that's another phone number, a toll-free number, at 1-866-488-7386. And also you can text, like if you're needing to talk to someone and you don't have anybody to talk to. A lot of people like to text nowadays. So you can text PA to 741-741.
Okay. And I also, remiss in my hosting duties, if anyone that is listening has a question, if you could put it in the Q&A, That's the way we get questions to the panelists. But please do not hesitate to put questions there. Do not put them in the chat because we can't see them. Please put them in the Q&A, and we will be able to see them and maybe respond to them. And very quickly, I want to also go back to Crystal. Do you have how folks could contact your group, or when you're meeting, or what you're going to do next?
I am on social media under Crystal Gilmore Harris. So they could email me. Inbox me that way. I can put my email address in the chat that they could possibly email me. Currently, we aren't scheduled to meet, but that doesn't mean we won't. And it's just because the holidays are coming up. So we're just, we just were together recently. But I'm a very flexible person. If there's a woman or even a man at this stage that has lost their soulmate and they just needed someone that they wanted to talk to, I'm open to doing that as well. Because some people prefer a more one-on-one. And I know I'm not a professional, but I can honestly say I know what they're going through. So I would even be open to doing that if somebody would want to do that as well. Great.
Actually, we do have some questions in the Q&A. I apparently hit the wrong button, but anyhow, and actually you guys have sort of answered some of them, but this is a good one. The first one is a pretty good one. The question is from someone watching on Facebook Live. They said, how long does grief last? How long will the pain last? And why don't we do this? Tamara, why don't you give the professional therapist answer, and then Crystal could give us her personal experience.
Well, to answer that question, it lasts a lifetime.
Wow.
There's different stages of grief. And with that being said, it comes in waves. Is the best kind of way to explain it. Like, you could be fine 1 second, and like Crystal was saying earlier, you're okay in front of everybody. You get home, you break down. You could be at work, something happens, a smell, something that reminds you, a song, anything, and you could break down. It's just unpredictable. It just depends on the person, how you experience grief.
Wow.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And it's kind of funny because that's something that people say to you that I think drove me the craziest. I have some people that say to me now, you're still grieving? Yeah, I kind of think that I will be continuing to grieve. It's just that I've learned how to grieve with the pain in a different way. The pain that I'm experiencing is not holding me back from living now, because I know that I'm here for a reason. So I've got to move forward and live. But the pain is there. And like you said, it's a song. I'll be in my car and I'll be driving and I'll be having such a good day. And one song will come on. And before I can even think of what's going to happen next, I'm bawling and driving in my car, singing and remembering Zane singing. Or there is a song that my dad would love, and I will hear it and I will be laughing and singing and crying all at the same time. So it's like every emotion possible is going at the same time. But I don't think you ever stop grieving, because if you love someone, you never forget them. So if I truly love the people that I've lost, they will always be a part of my heart. So they will always be a part of my life. So I'm not going to forget them. I just know that I don't have access to them. So I know I shared this with Mr. Butler. So I share all the time. I told him, a lot of people were saying I share too much on my Facebook page, but it was helping me through the process of grieving. And here I am 3 years later and I'm still sharing. So it doesn't end. Nope.
And I know he hasn't said anything yet, but I would like Pastor Camacho to chime in on this too. And he has such a unique perspective because he wears so many hats, or he was wearing so many hats. We were talking, he was saying, he's retired from pastoring the church, but he's still a chaplain of police. He was a chaplain in the military. He's been involved with numerous walks of life in terms of professionals, and numerous ways of people have, passed on. In your professional experience, how long do you think grief lasts or the pain lasts?
I can say that Saint and Tamara and Saint and Crystal, grief lasts forever. It's for life. At the beginning, it's painful, and the pain you feel it in your flesh, in your soul. It's all about you, and I'll tell you a very personal story. I just lost my father in August 31st. Excuse me. Give me a minute. Estoy aquí. Necesito hablar, okay? Sorry to the audience. It's just I have my grandson.
Right. That's what we speak. That's what we're supposed
That's part
to
of
be
my
doing.
life.
Yes.
Yes. I remember this day. I was at the Reading Police Department. It was August 31st. I went there in my capacity as a police chaplain and the head chaplain for Reading Police. And I was with another chaplain. So we went all around the departments to see the staff, the officers, the people that were there supporting them. When we went into traffic and we were having a very friendly, very caring conversation when I saw my cell phone. And when I saw the number, and I have it in mute, but I was able to look at the number and identify immediately the number. So I went out and I picked up the phone call, and I asked the person, "Hey, what's up?" And it happened to be my brother-in-law who lived in Florida, and who is a Vietnam vet and Desert Storm vet, and who was taking care of my dad at his home together with my sister. And he immediately asked me, "Hey, how you doing? How is everything?" And I said, "Why are you asking me how I'm doing and how I'm feeling?" And immediately he just threw it up in the cell phone on the distance, just to let you know that Don Nico, the way that they call my dad, just passed away this morning. And right there, it was a time of silence and quietness. The other chaplain saw me and came immediately and asked me, "Is everything okay?" And I looked at him and I just shared with him and I stated, "I just get a phone call that you don't want to get and to receive." And his phone call that is saying that my dad is my brother-in-law who called me to tell me that my dad just passed. As of this day, which is December the 14th, August 31st, November, and December, actually September, October, November, I wasn't able to go to Florida. I wasn't able to travel. I wasn't able to talk to my dad before he died. So my dad was incinerated. So we had not been able to do any kind of funeral memorial services at all. But the question is, how do we grieve, but also how do we mourn? And one of the things that I learned about the process, because for so many years, in my capacity as a chaplain in the forces, in a capacity in my chaplain as a law enforcement chaplain, and also as a chaplain in the community, I served 15 years as a chaplain at Reading Hospital, and I served 10 years in ICU, in intensive care unit, in where I had to be there with the family that were losing very close ones by way of natural or by way of being tragic, and also in support of the staff that was there, working hard, fighting against all kind of odds in trying to keep that life and save that life and that person. So here I am, and I hasn't been able to say anything, but what I learned in mourning is that, and what has been sustaining me today, and I'll say people, I cry there's sometimes in the school where I work, Southern Middle School, where my friend with whom I work, he look at me and he see that tears are coming, and he understand it's a process that I'm going through. But the way that I have been able to mourn the death of my dad is by honoring him. My dad was a very excellent individual, hard worker, individual who provide us with everything. And I learned so much for him. And an individual who didn't have the kind of education that he will and he wish could have it, but who ensured that me and my sister and my other brother were able to get something in life. So when and that's me personally, the way that I grieve and I mourn is by keeping the beautiful, wonderful, greatest memories on who was my dad, but who my dad still being. Because my dad used to say to me, doesn't matter if I pass, I always will be your dad. And I still remembering that statement coming from him one day that we were driving, and I was driving him to see my brother down in Puerto Rico. And at that moment, I didn't understand the holistic, profound meaning of that statement. And today, as I go back and remember the words that he shared with me, that he gave me, that helped me to go through the moments. One of the things that I said to people, the way that I honor my dad is by understanding that even though he is not there physically, but in memory, in the teaching of values, principles, and other things, he's still being alive for me. And that's a way of mourning and grieving. In other capacities, I was sharing with Mr. Butler, one of the things that I had learned is that there is different ways of grieving, not just personally, but also as a community, as an organization, especially in different settings that I have been able to serve. In the hospital setting, it's the way that the nurses and the doctors, sometimes when they're working hard to keep someone alive, and then unfortunately and sadly, they have to see that person just going, or when a decision needs to be made, the kind of decision that they don't want, because they look at the relative of that person that are there, they know how much that person means for them. But in the short time that they have been serving that person in the capacity of the medical field, they also get that kind of attachment to that individual. So when they see that person dying, unfortunately and sadly, without being, after doing everything that was in their power, but seeing him or her living and going, they know that it's going to be difficult and painful for them to call a relative or to go to the lobby where the relative are waiting and to deliver and to give the kind of news that are not going to bring happiness, are not going to bring any kind of joy, and the news that sometimes are going to bring hopeness, and they're not so hopeful, because in some way they come to understand how much that life that is there laying in bed in that room means for that family. The life of a little kid, 3 years old, of a baby that just was giving birth, of a senior that is on his 90s or her 90s, 80s, 70s. It doesn't matter the way that that person died, by sickness or by tragic event. They know that that person means so much. And internally, very insightful, they had to look at how are we going to grieve? So that's why for them it's so important, you know, they take time and they talk about it. The nurses and the doctors, they're very sensitive to the loss of someone. In the forces, in the Reading Police Department, I was talking to and chatting with Mr. Butler. And this year, 2021, we lost two wonderful, beloved officers, unfortunately and sadly. One was a police officer who retired and went to work for the Sheriff's Department. And the other one, the second one, was a member of the bike unit. And that's we just lost him between 3 months and 4 months ago. And when you go into the Reading Police Department, when that happened, that place, there was a place in where everybody that was coming knew that this is a place in where we come to report ourselves, to hear what's going on out there, to be encouraged to go out and serve the people of our community, the people of our different neighborhoods. So it's a place that at that moment brings hope. It's a place that brings kind of solidarity, but in a different dimension, in the dimension of here we are, we're going to support each other, we're going to back up each other, and we're going out all together to deal with whatever is out there. But when the news are brought that one of them, in a very unique, because they're a very unique family, they become so close to each other because they go through so much from the day that they come to that department to the moment that they left that department and going back home. And when they got the news that one of themselves just died, unfortunately, by ways not expected, and you go to that place, the place just doesn't become a place of encouragement, a place of hope, a place of service, but a place that is somber, and where the environment becomes so somber that questions, doubts, all kind of emotions, all kind of feelings. And one of the things, the ones that you see is the anger. And it's the anger feeling, the feeling of anger, because they start asking why we were not able to see it. Oh, we heard, but we didn't do anything. And they start questioning themselves. And to grieve or to mourn through that way, it's extremely difficult.
Yes.
To help them to, because the short time that they have.
Yeah, and Pastor Camacho, I wanted to circle back to Tamara because actually we had a few questions and I think some of them were answered in the chat, but it sort of goes to how in the workplace or in how we deal with things. One was specifically towards youth where they were saying they love the Crystal's approach to the group, but is there some way to do that for youth? And then I don't know if you could speak a little bit to professional at an organization, like what Pastor Camacho was talking about, how they should handle that.
You mean in terms of like where to
resources or are there groups that exist for youth? And when you're talking about an organization, you know, like the police or whatever, if there's something more on that side.
Well, there aren't, unfortunately. I've been looking, for groups that are youth focused. But a lot of the groups, like the ones that I mentioned, do accept children.
Oh, okay.
The three at the churches. There was one in Wyomissing. I think it was called Lifeline, or it's a place. I know they do NA meetings and AA meetings there as well.
Okay.
They had one that was an adult, like they were separate, had an adult and a youth one, but that was prior to the pandemic. So I'm not sure if they're still around in terms of groups, but definitely just any type of therapy through an agency like through Malvern, or some people choose to seek more specialized counseling, like a trauma therapist possibly. And those are around locally. I know there's one in Wyomissing, near the Sunoco that's there, on Park Road.
Mhm.
I know there's a woman that specializes in that there. Our agency, we have trauma-informed therapists, but it's not specifically, usually it's just like generalized, talking about it, practicing and teaching coping skills for it, just giving youth a place to talk and open up. And that can be done in the school. I know I have a couple kids that have experienced like tremendous grief and loss that I'm working with. So it doesn't have to be a specific place. Just any counseling agency should be able to provide those services.
All right, great, great. And actually, Rob Flowers, who's a good friend of all of ours, everybody knows him probably as the football coach at Daniel Boone. He just put in the chat a book that he read that he said really helped him. And once again, when his father passed, he was a community person. Everybody knew who he was, and that's like a whole nother aspect, I think, of grief too. When everybody knows your loved one, I don't want to say you relive it, but like every time you run into somebody, But Crystal was saying today, and I think Pastor Camacho also confirmed what he was saying. You honor them, and then folks that tell you great stories and how they help them. It's a continuation of honoring those folks. So that is great that Rob was able to put that in the chat. And for some people, that's what it is. You need a book. You need something where you can sort of explore it on your own, not necessarily with another person. So, but Pastor Camacho, I wanted to ask you, this session was supposed to be about how to get through the holidays. And I think we have like a double whammy going on here, where we have the COVID, pandemic, and people, thinking sort of they were maybe getting back to normal, and then this Omicron variant comes along, and so we sort of have where that piece going on. But then, like yourself, you've just recently experienced someone passing. So it's tough in that manner. And then I think about what Crystal was saying earlier about how she decided not to celebrate the first 2 years, and she's making up for it now. I mean, you got to see my office. I'm not a big Christmas person, but I'm becoming one, because there's just like there's nowhere I can't turn anywhere and I don't see Christmas stuff. But I enjoy it though, and I think it's a blessing. But Pastor Camacho, you want to talk more about the holidays?
Absolutely. And when you asked me the other day, I immediately went and I look into what I have that I have shared with people in the different settings that I have been, because we are all human beings, and like Tamara was saying, there are similarities in all the dimensions. And this is what I have been sharing with parishioners, police officers, soldiers, and nurses and doctors throughout, and some people in the community. The first thing that I share with them is about learning to set boundaries. Learning to set boundaries with holiday events. People are going to look into bringing, because like Crystal said before, people will come and they will do it in a very sincere, very honest, very loving, caring way. Be strong. You'll be able to go through. Those are not the words that we would like to hear, but unfortunately, sadly, they will come. But one of the things that I said to people is about learning to set boundaries with holiday events, because people will be coming and they will be looking at us and they will try to get us involved in so many things, specifically throughout these holidays that they know means so much for everybody. just to see, driving by and see the lights outside the homes, it brings so much meaning for each one of us, because it's a season of hope. And here we are, grieving the loss of someone that means so much for us.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things, we all can participate and not participate in whatever feels right for us. We had the choice and the right to pick, but we have to know what is our reality, and we have to know also, how far we can go. So we have to be sincere and honest with ourselves, and that's is by learning to know ourselves too, where we are, from 1 to 10, where we are we ready? And sometimes it's not about being ready. It's about giving us that opportunity, that blessing. The second thing that I share with them is about tune into your grief emotions. Tune into your grief emotions. And what I mean is grief does not take a backseat. It does not take a backseat during the holidays. It's not that grief would come and say, you know what, I'm going to stay here, so just move on, and then I will resume again. So sadly, unfortunately, grief does not take a backseat during the holidays and can often be magnified. It is important to acknowledge our feelings, as we have been sharing. That's very key, to acknowledge our feelings, not to be afraid of saying and recognizing, realizing, and sharing with somebody. I'm sad. I'm not hopeful. I'm angry. Because by doing so, we will learn to identify where we are also, and how we have to move on and to walk through. There is a beautiful song. We all know it. And it's a song that is always recited in funerals and in different settings, but specifically in memorial services, which is Psalm 23. But there is one verse within Psalm 23 that said, even though I walk through the valley, some version said to the valley of darkness, or to the valley of. So even though I walk through that valley of losing someone, I fear no evil, because thou art is with me. And it's about realizing that in this journey, that sometimes that we're going to see and to find ourselves, like it happened to me personally, like it happened to Crystal personally, twice in a lapse of just 1 year. God is going to bring someone. He's going to bring himself, but he's also going to bring someone that is going to help us to go and walk through that valley that is called grief for all
Amen.
of us.
Amen.
The third one is to plan ahead. Plan ahead to fill empty holiday roles. We need to learn to plan. Loss often means that certain roles will need to be filled. And so it is important to think ahead. And specifically, and especially with children, to consider who will fill those vacated roles. Who is going to be that person that's going to fill those vacated roles?
Who's going to carve the turkey?
Yeah. The other thing is about honor. Honor all traditions and honor memories. I tell you, I love my dad to death. Like I would say, my dad was special. I was not able to be there. It was 2 weeks when I get a call, and I look back and I look, when was the last time that I talked to him? It was 2 weeks before I got that news on the phone. It is a moment, and we had not been able to hold any funeral services, any memorial services for my dad. But yeah.
And I want to cut you off, but actually I want to make sure we get to Tamara on this, because somebody was asking specifically with kids in that school, because like you won't see them over the holidays. So what do you say to the kids as they're leaving the building, or what would you say, to what should teachers or people that won't be around the kids during the holiday? What would you say they should tell them?
Well, I actually make myself available.
Oh,
I
okay.
give
I'm
all
sorry.
the kids my cell phone numbers.
Wow.
And I do telehealth visits over the vacation.
Okay.
Mm.
That's
So yeah,
good to know.
definitely. I guess it's at the therapist's discretion, you know what I mean? But I
Mhm.
know I have a lot of kids like with like severe,
Mhm.
issues. So I like to, make sure I give them that opportunity. I tell them I'm flexible. If you don't want to meet, that's fine. But I still reach out and offer, an opportunity for them to, talk, because the holidays are just such a difficult time.
Now, do you do the same thing, Pastor Camacho? Do you allow kids to call you?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Okay. I
yeah.
never, 25 years, I never knew that. I never
Oh,
knew
yeah.
that. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's especially when you know how much it means for them, and like Tamara was saying, also when I look at the kids, we look at the cognitive level, it's sometimes hard for them to process the loss of someone, especially when it's a friend that is being close to, or a relative that is being close. We just got a couple kids at the school, Southern Middle School. One of them is in case law for community school, and it's a kid that lost his mom
Mm.
not so long ago. And we know that these holidays are not going to be, the most happy ones. So we reach out, and we told the people that are taking care of him, this is our phone numbers. Don't hesitate, because we want to be there for him, whatever are the circumstances and the moment. So it means a lot for that kid, because he knows that there are people out there that want to support him, that are not going there to question him, that are going to be there in presence. And just the fact of reassuring to him that in this process, like I said, Psalm 23:4, even though I walk through this valley, it's a valley that I had to walk. It's a valley that we cannot get away from.
No, can't.
It's a valley that sooner or later we're going to, some of us, like I said, I have been preaching for so many years. And here I am, personally, like a Tamara, like a Crystal, having to walk through that valley.
Yes.
So who is going to be there?
Yes.
And who wants really to be there?
Oh,
Well, yeah.
Well, I was going to say also another question. I'm just going to make sure I get them out.
Yeah.
And I'll direct this to Crystal, because I'm guilty of it. And I'm sure we all are. As we've done this, I've learned from what I've read. If you know you've said the wrong thing, as a person that may have, somebody may have said the wrong thing, what should that person do? Like, do they give the apology, or should they just not say anything, or what should they do?
I think it's an individual thing. At the beginning, when people were saying all the wrong things to me, I just found myself saying, thank you. Thank you. And then I would talk to someone else and say, can you believe what this person said to me? But as I started to accept what I was going through and figure out how to manage what I was going through, I found myself being a little more boisterous and saying to people when they would say things to me that were wrong, you really don't understand what I'm going through because you haven't suffered this type of loss. And then people kind of would look at me weird, but most people would say, thank you. I never thought of it that way. It's hard. It's like you have to make a choice. It depends on, I think you can tell too where the person is coming from, and that's the way you react to it as well. And like I said at the beginning, I think for me, what was so hard is that a lot of people see me as this strong, strong woman. And we talked about this. Most Black women carry this persona of being such strong human beings, and they can carry everything on their shoulders and they can just move forward. And I think that a lot of people just, that's what they were thinking of me. So they thought that they could probably say most of anything to me because I was strong enough to handle it and move on. But the S on my chest disappeared for a little while. And it was hard because I was like, why can't anybody see that I'm not wearing that S, that I am going through something too. And for once, I need people to support me. So it's hard. And I get it. I mean, I think I've said to you today, I'm guilty of saying some of those things too. But when it happens to you, then you internalize it a little bit different. And you're like, wow, I've been saying that to people, you know. I think another thing that people say, and it's just common, I'm here for you.
Mhm.
I heard that so often, and then they really weren't there for me. I think it was what was right to say at that time. So I think it's just, it depends on the person and it depends on the conversation and the moment. And like I said at the beginning, I just would say thank you. But now as time goes on and people are saying, wow, it's just so sad. You still seem like you're grieving because I haven't moved on. I haven't started a new relationship. And that's okay. And I realize that's okay because now I'm at a stage where I understand that it is okay to move forward without moving on, because it's two different things. There's a great video, and I tried to find it, of a lady who talks about that. She talks about how she lost her husband and she moved on. She moved forward. She didn't move on. And she explained what she meant because she moved forward, but moving on with him in her heart. So I think people don't understand the difference in that. So that's why I think they say some of the things they're saying because they fully don't understand what you're going through. And they feel like they have to say something. Some people need to learn you don't have to say anything. Just hello and how, you know, have a good day and you're doing well.
Pastor Camacho, she said that made me think of them brothers that came up to Job and they saw it was going bad and they just prayed. They just, you know, they just kneeled down next to him. It's like, we don't know what to say, you know.
Well,
so.
There is a reality, okay? There is a reality that sometimes if you try to explain and look the dimension of that reality, I'll tell you the truth. People will look at you and will say, you don't know what you're saying, you're crazy, blah, blah. But there is a reality. Life continues.
Life continues, yes.
Life continues. Like if I said, grief is not going to step back. Life is not going to stop. Life is going to look at you and going to say, I'm sorry, I had to continue.
Wow.
And that's another reality. Tamara said something very meaningful. And now she looked at this year and she said, and she shared with us, well, these holidays are going to be special. And I'm going to bring a new meaning.
Yes.
A completely new meaning. But what was that she said? She said something that is very critical for all of us in grieving too. I know that my boyfriend, I know that that person that I love and the other person that I love too, my dad, both of them will look at me and will say, enjoy the holidays.
Yes.
Because they knew, and because the holiday have a completely very a special meaning for them, and they will look at it and they will say, Crystal, do not hold yourself. We know how much you love us, and in doing that, you know, life has to continue. So what I said to people about that is about be creative.
Yes.
Give yourself the opportunity and the blessing of being creative. Look at, it's not that you're going to forget, because we will never forget. But looking at what is today, how can I bring something new into that? I continue grieving, but I'm grieving now with a completely different dimension too. And then something, and giving to that grieving something special. And where I can continue celebrating, but celebrating with meaning the life of those that I lost, but also giving myself a completely new opportunity.
Yes.
And,
Tamara, I just wanted to, and forgive me because we didn't talk about this, but we've been talking about maybe Christian holidays, but there are other non-secular holidays, and maybe we can talk to Pastor Camacho about other religious holidays that happen around this time of year. But is there anything that you would give as a word of advice? Some kids celebrate Kwanzaa, I guess Hanukkah's over, but there's other things that people celebrate, or they may not celebrate the holiday at all, depending on what the religion is, but the family's together. Is there any advice you'd have for them, or anything that you pass on to the kids when they come to you in that manner?
Because of like the cultural, the
cultural
differences.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had anybody. I mean, I did have one kiddo who they didn't celebrate holidays. I think they were Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
But it was nothing specific to like an issue that they were having or a concern or anything of that sort.
Yeah, I would wonder, like, we go to, a lot of pain in school to try to neutralize, the holidays, the language and things, but it's almost impossible. So I didn't know if a kid, would come to you, say, hey, I don't understand what's going on. It's not like this in my house, and, how they would, deal with things. So, all right. But Pastor Camacho, have you had anything like that come your way?
Well, in our case, as we have a wave of celebrating. I can tell you in Puerto Rico, from my own.
Okay.
In Puerto Rico, I remember when I was a child and then a teenager, going through funeral services, and I can tell you there was a celebration. There was a time where we cry, but it was a moment of gathering, not just the family of the one that just went away, but the entire community. Okay. People that we never knew, but it was a way of coming and being there. It was a way of reunion for us in Puerto Rico.
And I believe that happens here in the United States too. Tamara and Crystal, I think Crystal, we had that discussion about sometimes, unfortunately, the funeral becomes a reunion. And Tamara, you know what I'm talking about. You haven't seen people, unfortunately, because we don't get together for the right reasons sometimes. The funeral's the only time we get together, and it becomes like, and I know people, I've always seen people get upset, like, why are you guys, in their mind, celebrating or having fun or whatever? Somebody has passed.
Well, I said that we didn't get to celebrate my dad because of COVID, and he deserved being celebrated. Where with Zane, because it wasn't COVID, it was this huge, there were so many people. I think in 3 days, I probably shook 1,500 hands of, I'm sorry, please accept my condolences. Where with my dad, we didn't do traditional. We showed up and we stood up front during the viewing because we knew that was going to be the only time we were going to be able to accept anybody saying anything that they wanted to say, because we couldn't have that many people at the funeral. So it's a celebration, and I feel like he was treated and he deserved more. But you reminded me of something. You told me, but people celebrated your dad when he was alive and gave him roses when he was alive. So he was celebrated, and thanks for that. I needed to hear that because
let me tell that story, because people should know this, and maybe they don't. Our father, Danny Gilmore Sr., coached Little League football forever. Like, he's coached everybody. And one of the kids he actually coached was Danielle Marshall, who was a very famous basketball player that graduated from Reading High, played in the NBA. And Danielle thought so much of her father that he sent him one of his jackets from, was it the was it the All-Star game? I forget which jacket it was. And she was saying how her dad really, really cherished that, but he got to see it while he was alive. So he really showed him how he felt about them. And I will never forget that. She told me that I will never, and I told her it made me start sending thank you letters and doing things that I normally don't do, because I think we do have to take the time and let people know that we appreciate them, you know.
Yeah. There is something that I would like to share in relation to. I don't know how many of you remember. I'm 65, so I'm coming from that time where the Cowboys movies with John Wayne and McClane and all, you know, the Rifleman, and I always, you know, it was always portrayed to us that when there was a cowboy and the Indians fighting against each other, and then one killing each other, and then here we saw the Native Americans, you know, dancing around. That was very despective. That was in the movie. But I learned from a very personal friend of mine who is a Native American, and I met this person in one of my time serving in the Army. When one day we are in a memorial service, and this happened actually in Afghanistan, where we lost 5 soldiers. And I remember, because that's another dimension of so when we grieve and we celebrate. We lost 5 soldiers in a very tragic way, and what we did was a memorial service was a way of celebrating and reaffirming the cause that sadly, unfortunately, led those soldiers to die. So when my friend looked at me and he said, you know what it means for us, you know, when we were dancing, it means that even though we were in disagreement with that individual, but we honor the cause for what he died. And I look at I told him, thank you for telling me that. And that's cultural. That's cultural within the Native Americans. It never came to be something despective than just honoring that individual, independently of the reasons that it was about dancing around, was not about disrespecting that individual. It was about honoring that individual. One last thing that I would like to share is that for all those that, you know, of us and grieving, is that it's about do something kind for others. We had to know, we had to look ourselves that when we are in the midst of grief, we still have something to offer to the world. We have something to offer to the world. We have meaning. We have values. We value ourselves. We had to value ourselves. And we had to know that we still being human beings created with a purpose, for the purpose. And yeah, it's not easy to walk that valley. But when we go into and we look at the ones that we're going to encounter as we walk to that valley, now we can extend our hands to them and take them and help them to bring it up.
Wow.
And without saying a word, like Crystal was saying, hey, we not necessarily have to say something. Just a simple poem in the back. It say a lot. There was a moment in history. It's a moment in history. The master is in the cross. The savior of the world, as it is projected in Christianity, is right in the word, in the cross. He looks to heaven and he said, Father, Father, why have you forgotten me? But it's a moment that is followed. It's a question, a statement, not question, a statement that is followed by a moment of silence. Silence have a powerful way of telling and letting us know that there are times in life in where a word, it doesn't need it.
Mm. Okay, I don't have a mic to drop, but I would give you one, but that was a mic drop moment there. What we do at the end of each session is we give each person a chance to give their social media or how to get a hold of you and get in touch with you. And I think Crystal had said it, but I'll have her say it again. How can folks get a hold of you if they would like to talk to you?
I am on social media under Crystal Gilmore Harris. My email address is coach, and then it's capital C, capital H, 07 at msn.com. That's pretty easy because it's just Coach Crystal Harris, CH, 07 at msn.com. And like I said, we would welcome new members. And if somebody is not comfortable with being in a group setting, I don't mind doing one-on-one with people, because I realize that sometimes you just need an ear for someone to listen who fully understands what you're going through.
Okay, and Tamara? How can folks get a hold of you?
Folks can get a hold of me at my email, which is trallen32@gmail.com.
Okay. And
Or if
now,
they just have questions, I mean, I'm open to give my phone number.
and I'm going to throw this in there real quick, because I always have this issue. You're school-based and you're assigned to Thomas Ford schools. So that doesn't mean that you necessarily can't see other kids unless you see them in the office, but you are assigned to Thomas Ford, so you can't go to another school building and see kids there. So
I can't.
what should they do? What should
Well, I'm
parents do?
actually in 4 different schools right
Oh,
now.
you are?
I'm
Okay.
at the RKAA at City Line. At the RKA at Thomas Ford. I'm at the BCIU Learning Academy. And I'm also at Reading High.
Okay.
And I do outpatient services as well for adults. So.
Okay, great. And now, I don't know how Pastor Camacho is going to do this, because he wears like 20 different hats, but what's the way for people to get a hold of you if they would like to?
The best 3 ways. You can stop at Southern Middle School and ask for Nick. Everybody knows me there, either for Nick or Mr. Camacho. Second one, you can stop at Reading Police Department and ask for Chaplain Camacho or Pastor Nick, and everybody will tell you how to. And they will actually reach out to me for you, or by email. You can email me at Camacho, which is CAMACHO Nicholas NICOLAS 56 at gmail.com.
Okay. And I want to once again thank our sponsors, the Lonnie Walker Foundation, the City of Reading, the Mayor's Office, and the African American Community Connections. That all these sponsors have been very helpful. I hope that everyone has gained something from this session. I have. There's a few things that I'll definitely carry with me. And as I'll say what I've said for the last few sessions, if we can help even just one person with what was said tonight, we've done our work. And I want to thank all the panelists. You were fantastic. Christian, you're the best. But we have a final session next Tuesday. It is on substance abuse, mental health and substance abuse. And it's a very critical point that's going on in our city right now. So please join us next week. These sessions are put on YouTube or Facebook, I believe, where you can view them, you can share it. Please don't hesitate to share it. And if you find a way, or if there's some piece of this that you're using, please let us know, because we want to make sure if we do this in the future that we make it better. So any constructive criticism, you can send it to Winton Butler. I'm at Butler WI at Reading School District, SD.org. But we want to make this as best we possibly can. And once again, thank you, panelists. This was excellent. And I'm hoping that everybody has a great holiday. and that you are able to share with your family and enjoy each other, even with COVID, that you're able to have a nice holiday. Thank you, and we'll see you next Tuesday.